Alright guys, I was told to update the list with phones that are going to get Android 10. So these phones are all going to get Android 10 and they're in that $200 price range. So let's get started. My favorite gaming phone is the Note 8 Pro. So this phone goes for around $250 to $220 right now. The price fluctuates a lot. So this phone is just a straight up beast. It's got a 6.5-inch IPS display, 1080p, 395 for the PPI, a beautiful glass and metal design. You do have Android 9 on top of MIUI 11, and this will receive Android 10. The Helio G90T processor is an absolute beast, along with the Mali G76. So you do have micro SD support, along with 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. You also have your headphone jack on here, NFC. You also have a pretty big 4,500 milliamp battery, so pretty good for gaming. Did really well in my screen on time. So you do have a 64 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel dedicated macro, and you also have a 2 megapixel depth sensor. Shoots in 2160p. This is one of my favorite camera smartphones. It takes excellent, very crisp and clear pictures, so this is definitely the phone you're going to want to look at first. Next is going to be the Samsung Galaxy A51. So this is a more than capable gaming phone. You can pretty much play to medium to high settings on almost all games. So you do have a really nice design on here as well. The highlight is the Super AMOLED display. It's really beautiful. It's got the little tiny punch hole in it. 1080p 405 for the PPI. This one already has Android 10 on top of One UI 2.0. You also have the Exynos 9611 processor, along with the Mali G72 GPU. Now you also have micro SD support, which is always great. 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on the base model. You have your 3.5mm jack, NFC. The fingerprint scanner is built into the display. A very nice 4,000 milliamp battery. My screen on time did around 10 to 11 hours of screen on time, so as you can see, it's a straight up beast. This also has some very great cameras, a quad camera setup, 48 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel ultra wide, along with a 5 megapixel macro camera, and you also have a 5 megapixel depth sensor. Actually shoots in 2160p, and on the front you have a 32 megapixel camera that shoots in 1080p. So this is overall a really good gaming phone. Next is going to be the Bold M1 for around 200 bucks. This is a straight up beast as well. Now there's no punch hole on this display, and this is why I really love this phone. It's also a AMOLED display, 1080p 403 for the PPI. You have that pop-up camera, which I really love. So if you want something with no intrusion on the display for 200 bucks, you cannot really go wrong with the Bold M1. Like I said, it's supposed to get Android 10. You have the Helio P70 processor, along with the Mali G72 GPU. You'll also have micro SD support, along with 128 gigs of internal storage, which is excellent. 4 gigs of RAM. You do have that 3.5mm jack. This model does not have NFC, but you have the fingerprint scanner under the display. A very respectable 3,500 milliamp battery will get you through the day, no problem gaming. You do have 18-watt fast charging, along with 10-watt wireless charging as well, so that's really awesome. A 16 megapixel camera setup and a 5 megapixel depth sensor. Shoots in 1080p, and the pop-up camera is a 13 megapixel that also shoots in 1080p. So this is one of my personal favorites on the list. So if you really want an iPhone, then I think the iPhone 7 is still very capable for gaming. It's one of my favorite iPhones. You can easily find it for $200, if not less. Links will be down below. Very premium design, aluminum back, aluminum frame. This phone actually has an IP rating, IP67, dust and water resistant. You have a very small 4.7-inch display, so if you really like compact phones, and this is going to be great as well. 720p, 326. Display is still nice and bright and vibrant. This actually runs the latest version of iOS 13.3. You have the Apple A10 chip, which is also very capable of playing pretty much all games on high except for Fortnite. No expandable storage, of course. 32 gigs of storage on here and 2 gigs of RAM. You also have stereo speakers on here, which are pretty loud. NFC with Apple Pay and you also have the fingerprint scanner on the front, 1060 milliamp battery, and you do have a 12 megapixel camera on the back, which is actually pretty respectable. It's actually still a really good camera for such an older phone, and that shoots in 2160p. You also have a 7 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 1080p. So overall, this is a beast of a phone. The battery life doesn't really last that long, so if you're going to be doing hard gaming, just know you're going to be kind of running to the charger here, but still an overall excellent buy. Alright, so last on the list is the LG G7. This is an excellent smartphone, really good for gaming. IP68 dust and water resistant, glass and aluminum frame, just a really nice feeling phone. 6.1 inch for the display, 1440p, 564, so very high resolution, beautiful display. You do have Android 9, and this will get Android 10, the Snapdragon 845 along with the Adreno 630. You also have micro SD support, and you also have 64 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM. So this can pretty much play all games on high, so that's why it's one of my favorite on the list. So no matter what you throw at it, it will be able to play on high. You do have the headphone jack on here. You also have NFC with this guy at 3000 milliamp battery, 18 watt fast charging, and you also have wireless charging on this guy as well. So you have really good cameras still on here as well. 16 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide, shoots in 2160p, still takes excellent photos. And also for an honorable mention, the LG V40 is still an excellent phone. It's pretty much like the G7, just with 6 gigs of RAM, and you also have a bigger display coming in at 6.4 inches, and that's an OLED display. So if you want a pretty much a bigger version of the G7, then you're definitely gonna want to look at the V40. It's still in that $200 price range, and it also has an additional telephoto lens, an additional wide camera on the front. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.